Welcome to another episode of Skin Deep with Skin Associates. I'm Dr. Jeremy Green.
And I'm Dr. Jolie Kaufman.
And we're board certified dermatologists in Miami, Florida. And today we're going to be discussing something that kind of built our entire industry, which is neuromodulators or botulinum toxin, or people commonly know it as Botox. And we're going to dive deeply into the product at first, but really I think what'll be most interesting is what most people don't know about Botox and neuromodulators. So Jolie, tell us a little bit about the background. How did we get here?
I think we've all heard of Botox. I mean, I think that word is universal. It's like using the word Kleenex. You know, we don't say, pass me a facial tissue. We know that it relaxes muscles that cause wrinkles. We know that it's been on the market for a while. I think people understand that. It came actually out of a serendipitous discovery out of Canada with our friends who are dermatologists and ophthalmologists there, Dr. Jean Carruthers, Dr. Alan Scott, who were injecting it for strabismus and blepharospasm, so abnormal eye movements. And they noticed that people actually had improvement in their wrinkles. So serendipitous discovery, and here we are more than 20 years later with the FDA approval that happened about 23 years ago for Botox. So I think we know those parts of it. I know it's the best thing ever for wrinkles. But I don't think we know some of the other info, like that there's not just Botox on the market, that we actually have 6 FDA-approved botulinum toxins, and they're all type A toxins, so same type A toxin on the market. We just call everything Botox.
Yeah, but I think what a lot of people don't know is it's not just a muscle relaxer. It's not just something that is going to treat wrinkles and relax your face. One of the things you said, serendipity, that we noticed, I think we noticed over time too, is when we inject people in the frown lines, like what we call the glabellar frown lines, the pores started to shrink. You notice people that were injected over time, there was less oiliness and sort of tighter pores there. And I think some of those observations were extrapolated then to like, what can we do for skin quality everywhere? So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Jolie?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a whole other side of these botulinum toxin molecules. And yes, we do know definitively that it can relax muscle contraction, but there's a whole nother side that we don't talk about a lot. And that is what you just talked about, is the anti-inflammatory component, the way that it modulates release of cytokines, which are inflammatory molecules, its effect maybe on the muscles of pores or the release of sweat from sweat glands. So there is a whole other side to this that offers benefits that we don't even talk about every day when we treat patients. And again, those are some of the observations we've seen by treating patients for more than 25 years with this molecule.
Definitely. And the product's injected a bit differently. So when we're targeting muscle, we're injecting deeper. And you do notice some skin quality benefits, but when we're seeking skin quality like rosacea, oily skin, tightening pores, we inject more superficially. Those injections can be a little more uncomfortable, but with topical anesthesia and other sort of modalities, we can make it comfortable. But really, yeah, it's just amazing how versatile the product is. And another thing that I think is fascinating, and you and our research partner, Alex Casanigo, were some of the pioneers in this, but Botox for scars. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So there's when you wound yourself, any kind of wound, whether it's surgery, whether you scrape yourself falling off your bike, there's an inflammatory phase to wound healing. And that phase is pretty short in the beginning, but it's a lot of inflammation. So we see redness, you notice the pain after the injury. If we could decrease that brief period of inflammation, we can affect the way a wound heals. So the less inflammation, the less chance we have of getting abnormal scars like keloids or hypertrophic scars, those thick, itchy scars. So there definitely are reports about botulinum toxin use for wound healing and also for pain. So decreasing that inflammation, decreasing the release of some of the pain mediators, maybe post-operatively could be a great indication for botulinum toxin.
Yeah, it's interesting that the botulinum toxin, so I've used it proactively. Like when patients come to me and they're like, look, I had a tummy tuck or a C-section scar, some sort of breast surgery or something, or especially upper face trauma or surgery, I'll use botulinum toxin upper face both to relax the muscles, but I'll also sprinkle little droplets around the wound edge because it inhibits factors like TGF-beta, which we know sort of drives pathologic scar formation, meaning hypertrophic scars and keloids. So when people want the kitchen sink approach, which includes, visible light, fractional lasers, I will also do neuromodulators at the same time. Do you do that as
I think
well?
it's a great idea, especially on the face. Nobody wants a scar on the face, and there's so much muscular action. But again, like you said, you could treat the muscle for the pull, but there's a whole other side, which is treating the inflammation. And again, that injection would be done at a different depth. So important for somebody who's injecting you to understand the way this molecule works and where to exactly place it in the skin.
Yeah, because centrally, it can actually help with the pain of the scars. So when pathologic scars form, like I've had patients with them on the chest, keloids that are itchy or painful, with the stretch. And if you inject some botulinum toxin around the border and even into the scar, it really helps with both pain and itch. Pretty fascinating.
We've been talking about Botox, and of course, it's the first neuromodulator that was introduced here by in the U.S. By the FDA in 2002. So it's been on the market for a long time. But we do have other ones that have come to the market that we don't talk about. So I think people just universally call it Botox. But Dr. Green, let us know what other ones we have and why it matters that there are other brands and any info on that.
So now we have 6 US FDA approved botulinum toxins. So you have Botox, Dysport, Xeomin, Jeuveau, Daxxify, and most recently Latibo. And I think I got the order correct as far as when
You did.
Thank you. I get a gold star. And it's important to know because even though they're all type A, so serotype A botulinum toxin, and they all behave somewhat similarly, they each have unique personalities. And we're fortunate here because Jolie likes to have all the toys in our practice. So I think we have all the FDA approved neuromodulators in our practice. So you can try whichever you'd like. But the point is they each have nuances. They each have different personalities. And I personally have been injected. I joke, I haven't frowned since 2010. So I think I've had every single one in my face, but it's important to be able to know the differences. Like Dysport, I love with my male patients. It's a bit firmer. The onset might be like a day quicker. And there is definitely more spread. So when people have larger foreheads, I love Dysport. I love it for my male patients. But the flip side is I don't always love it in the lower face. So when we're injecting lower face, like DAO, masseters, and sometimes platysma, I feel comfortable there. But there are some places where spread may not be advantageous, meaning these are tiny muscles we're targeting, so you want to be ultra precise. Big muscle, forehead muscle, I love spread, but other places I may not. So Jolie, I know you and I both sometimes will use 2 and maybe even 3 different botulinum toxin A's. And again, that's something people don't talk about, right?
Right. I think most people say, oh, I had Botox. So they're not necessarily getting Botox. They might have gotten Dysport. And again, they're all made from the same type A toxin. In fact, the exact same strain of Clostridium with all the ones we have on the market now, but they do have different flavors. And I would liken it to more, not even different ice cream flavors, but more different flavors of chocolate. So they're more similar than they are dissimilar, but they definitely have nuances to them.
Absolutely. And there's one that, I tend to get on my face often, which is Xeomin, which to me, it feels very precise. It feels a little bit lighter in my face. So I like that. I don't like looking frozen. I like trying to hang on to whatever testosterone I got left. So I don't want to look like totally frozen. And some of my male patients love looking frozen. They think that it's, it's not efficacious unless they're totally frozen. So it's totally up to the individual. But the point is we can pick different products to kind of customize or tailor the outcome to what, one of our patients wants.
Like I know when you inject me, you use a different neuromodulator here than you use in my forehead. Of course, this forehead's a little, long. And something like Dysport might be better coverage, a little more natural looking because it's not going to have sharp demarcations on a bigger forehead. On a smaller forehead, maybe you'd want something like Xeomin or something a little more precise.
Yeah, and Xeomin is the naked toxin. So there's 150 kilodalton protein, right? And some of the other products have carrier proteins, which again, it's not necessarily good or bad, but there is some thought that additional protein may cause additional immunogenicity. So some of my patients actually have asked for that by name or Daxxify, which is also, the naked 150 kilodalton neurotoxin with an additional peptide. But that's something that patients are aware of now. They're wondering, especially post-COVID, like all the knowledge that we all gained just by having to live in this sort of nightmare about immunogenicity and vaccines and what happens when we add proteins to our body. How does our immune system react? So some of my patients ask for products that are just the toxin without any accessory proteins. I also wanted to mention Daxxify, which sort of came out with a bit of messaging about a longer lasting toxin. And I think you and I both like it for its personality. We don't necessarily pick it for any sort of stated duration. I feel like the clinical performance is great of that product, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. So our research center, again, was involved in the studies for Daxxify for years. My gist is that it is longer acting than what we currently use. And some of that, again, is related to dose. Some can be related to injection technique as far as how long yours individually might last. But I do think Daxxify does have a longer duration profile. It also has a unique peptide attached to it. And that peptide supposedly keeps it at the neuromuscular junction longer. And right now, what they're looking at in studies is, does it give you a little bit more of a skin quality improvement? And I think, like you mentioned earlier, those are things that we notice over time. And since Daxxify's only been with us for a couple years, I think we'll learn more about that skin quality improvement. But patients do like it. I particularly love it around the crow's feet. I think it gives a really nice, smooth relaxation to the muscle in an area sometimes that's hard to get full control of.
So like you said, it's almost like we have this toolbox and we can customize even region specific in our patients. And you and I have both been doing that for a number of years. Another product that I want to mention is Jeuveau, which is Korean manufactured, which I know resonates with a lot of people because people think about K-beauty and how impactful everything that comes out of Korea is. So Korean manufactured. What else? Can you talk a little bit about that product?
So Jeuveau probably looks the most like Botox when you look at the molecule itself, as far as the size of the molecule, its studies. And of course, they've gone head to head up against Botox also. To me, it's the most similar to Botox, Jeuveau is. They came to market with no medical, I guess, no disease indication.
Yes.
So I think it's a little easier for them to market maybe to a younger group of consumers.
Yes.
Easier access.
So they have fun, kind of young, more disruptive marketing, I would say, than we've seen from the industry, which is great. I mean, the whole goal of the neuromodulator industry is to take this away from being like a vanity, like a luxury, like a vapid sort of thing that only vain people do. They want this to become part of self-care. They want this to be like you get your teeth cleaned twice a year or however many times a year. They want this to be part of your health maintenance. And so to the extent that companies can bring visibility to these products, it, I guess, elevates the entire market, It normalizes what we do.
The American Society for Plastic Surgery and the American Society for Derm Surgery both kind of track how invasive and non-invasive procedures are in cosmetics. So for the non-invasive, neuromodulators is the number one. So it's growing. And they think by 2030, it'll double from what it is today. Today, it's at almost 10 million treatments a year. So I think it is, back in the day, nobody said they got Botox. When someone said, "Oh, you look good," I was like, "Oh, I rest and exercise."
Hydration.
Yeah.
Drank like
Eating
8
a healthy
gallons of water.
diet,
Yeah.
whatever it was Botox. But now I think people are a little more open about it. They talk about it. "Oh, I went and got my Botox." And so I think we'll see it more popular. And now that it's been around for so long, and we realize that when done properly, when reconstituted properly, injected in the right plane, injected in the right dose, it is very, very, very safe. So the side effects are less and less as we've known more and more.
Can you talk a little bit about mood? It's something we haven't touched on, about kind of how it makes you feel. And again, I think the company even sought to get an indication for depression, right? The data didn't totally meet the muster needed for an indication. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so they did. They were doing studies to try to get this approved for depression, for mood. And I think when we talk about giving ourselves feedback in any way, like how you can manifest things, that you could say, "Okay, I'm going to have a great day today," and maybe your day will be a little better. I think this frown muscle reminds yourself that you're angry or sad. So the more you frown, the more you're telling yourself that maybe you're upset or, you're angry at something. And when you can't frown, not only do you feel better, but other people perceive you as happier. And so maybe that's feedback also. So there definitely is a component. I guess in the studies, it wasn't enough for them to get full FDA approval for that. But I definitely know that when it wears off, people come in, they're like, "I just feel so much better when I have my treatment and after my treatment. I feel like I look better. I feel like I'm happier." And so there is a component that we see, not only that we saw in the studies, but also that you see in real life.
Yeah, definitely. I can remember one of my patients in particular, one of my early patients that was a German high executive in a big company. And he said, everybody always thinks I'm angry. And he's like a nice, gentle guy, but the combination of the German accent and the persistent furrow made everyone think, like that I'm upset. People are always, and he's like, this is what really bothers me. And that's what drove him. It got him to go over the hurdle of seeing this as sort of like a vanity, or maybe especially at that time, more of a feminine treatment. And he loved it. He became, I don't want to say hooked is not the right word, but just consistent, because, he'd come every 4 months and it relaxed. And I think sort of like the energy or whatever, the visage, the that you're putting out into the world, it sort of is a feedback loop, right? Yeah. So if you seem angry, then maybe people interact with you in that way, and then you might get angrier because people are interacting with you that way, and maybe they're honking at you more. No, anyway. But the point is, I really do believe that there's sort of a powerful impact on how patients feel.
And in the glabella is where most of, or in fact, all of these neuromodulators went through the FDA. So that's their primary endpoint for focus for getting approval, is injection just in this area. And when you look at that area, a lot of the studies show that almost literally high 90% of patients are satisfied with their treatment. So this is a great place to start if you've been a dabbler and you're worried about doing it, or you're nervous about doing it, or you're male and you don't want to look like you've had Botox, or you're frozen. I think glabella is a highlight spot. I almost have never met anyone who didn't like that injection.
It's the gateway drug. And I think now we've learned with the anatomy advancements how we can treat it even in patients. Before, we would be nervous about treating people with really low brows, where their forehead muscles contracting, kind of holding on for dear life to keep their eyes open. I think now our understanding of anatomy is advanced to the point where we can treat anyone really with botulinum toxin, maybe open their eyes more. So the product is just so versatile. But I do want to make the counterpoint. It's not all roses and daisies. You do see people that are injected with improper technique, and that's sort of given a black eye to the whole field, where, we see it still a decent amount in Miami, where I kind of joke, it's like the Angry Bird look, where people's central brow is crashed and their lateral brow is flying up. So they look like those Angry Birds, which are cute in cartoons and games on your phone, but they're not cute in real life. But people don't seem to notice it because they keep walking around like this.
And again, the same feedback you were talking about is that if people see you looking like that, they're like, and honestly, scared of you.
It sort of damages the perception of everything we do, because people see that and they're like, there's no way on earth I want to do that. I'd rather have wrinkles or frowns, and I co-sign on that. So I think it's important that we mention, you have to be in the hands of an injector that has experience that you trust. I mean, the fortunate part of these products is if you look like an Angry Bird, in 4 months, you'll look back to your normal happy bird self, right? So they're temporary. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the messages, that if you want to try on these products, worst case scenario is a couple months, you may not love how you look, but like I said, if you're in the hands of an experienced injector, someone that knows what they're doing, I think the products are spectacular.
Botox, or any of the 6 that we have on the market now, Dysport or Jeuveau, they take a few days to kick in. So when someone injects you, they don't get to see what you look like, unless you're their family member and they get to go home with you. But in general, they don't get to see what you look like. So there is a huge learning curve. This isn't for the first, time someone injects somebody, because they don't know what the outcome looks like until they've done a whole bunch of patients, seen them back, done touch-ups, or followed up on patients. So, if it's your first time or it's your injector's first time, maybe make an appointment 2 weeks later so that you can take a look at what it looks like on you, what you're happy with, and ways to tweak it. Because again, there is a delayed onset to all of these products. Some maybe, a little quicker than others, but in general, it's delayed.
Which makes it challenging when we learn and when we train, right? Because you're used to instant feedback. So if we inject someone's lip with a little bit of filler, you see the lip getting bigger, right? Here, you inject one of the neuromodulators and it's like nothing happened. You know what I mean? Some patients will be like, oh my God, I already see a difference. I'm like, oh, it's a little, thank you for your confidence, but probably not, So yeah, absolutely. It's, I think you bring up an excellent point.
Yeah, it is truly an art. I mean, we're so lucky to have 6 formulations of botulinum toxin A on the market. They're all, again, they all have their personality, but they're all effective. They've all been studied for years in thousands of patients to get through the FDA here in the US. So I have full confidence that they all provide good results and a good safety profile. But again, you're at the hands of your injector, and experience is key. And it's definitely an art when injecting neuromodulator.
I want to make one more point since you said that. 6 FDA approved. You are completely safe if you're in the hands of someone ethical and safe. But we have seen a rise of counterfeit products coming to the US. Just like any other sort of product or industry, we have counterfeit products coming in, and then people who may be making unscrupulous choices that are injecting these products. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Or
Well, Miami might be like,
yeah, Miami, New York, any of the really big markets.
Ask what you're getting.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not really sure of the office you're in, maybe ask to see the vial. It definitely matters. You know, the ones that are here that are approved are formulations that have been studied for a long time. The labs get examined by the FDA. The way they manufacture, the dosing has to be within a certain range for each vial. You know, so it is important to get the product that was approved. That may cost you more, but it's going to save you from looking, you know, weird or having a complication.
Yeah, and one of my patients was actually a victim of one of those injectors in New York that was all over the news. And the patient was so upset after. They got heavy metal testing, all this blood testing. They said, look, the toxin lasted longer than anything else I've ever had, but who knows what the heck was put on their face, you know? So it's kind of scary. So there is something to, you know, going to someone that's trustworthy.
Thank you for hanging out with us today to talk about all the things that you don't know about Botox. This is Skin Deep with Skin Associates, Jolie Kaufman.
Jeremy Green.
Thanks.
Thanks. See you next time.